right, coming up on this next song, I got my daughter here. She's 10 years old. She's going to come join me in a minute.
Stupid punk rock. I just think of it as rock and roll because that's what it is.
Neighbors.
No one loves you like he loves you.
You want Bill Sperm with that?
Sundays, it goes back in the lab.
Your answer is non-sequitur.
All right, Stan with the Punk Rock Chronicles back again for another cool episode. I'm stoked on this one. But first, before we get started with our introducing our guest today, I'm going to introduce our normal cohort. So we've got Bob the Bastard.
Hey.
Shrom Shrizzle.
Shriz.
And then we're stoked. We got Jayhawk from the Infirmities who came down tonight for this interview. And we've been talking for quite a few years, and he was going to be on our podcast 3 years ago before COVID hit, and it was bad timing, but we're stoked he's here now, and I'm looking forward to hear what he's got going on. So how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, man. It was the drive was smooth, so
By the way, he drove from Salinas
to
Lake Forest, California. Guys,
Nice.
That is not around the corner, man.
Yeah,
You're a trooper, bro.
He's a badass, that's for sure. No, we're stoked.
it.
Yeah, we're stoked that he came down, met with us, or to meet with us, and I guess the big thing is let's just get started, man. How did you start Infirmities?
So we've been a band for 11 years. Started in my hometown, streets of Salinas, California. Originally, it was all members from Salinas. They created the sound, and we created about a 30-minute set. We started playing gigs. Made our first demo. My dad owns a recording studio, so recorded with my dad the first couple songs. And then pretty much I decided that I wanted to take us to LA every week, and the band thought I was crazy. So the only guy that stuck around was the bass player. And he's like, the rest of them were like, it's kind of a crazy idea there, Jay. So you want to go every weekend? I said, yeah, every single weekend, Friday, Saturday. We're always going to be going south. So at that point, the original guitarist was like, you know what, I'll train anybody up on guitar, just bring them to my garage. Bring me a kid from high school that wants to jump in the van and go every weekend, and I'll train him on the riffs. So it was kind of like taking all the Ninja Turtles to Master Splinter's little hut there, and he would train them up, and it was good.
Yeah, that's right.
It worked out,
Before we move on with the Infirmities, so when you grew up, did your dad have a studio as you were growing up as well, or is this later in life?
Yeah, my dad always had a recording studio. My dad was in punk rock bands before I was born. So back in like 1975, 76, my dad was in a band called God Devil where they all painted their face like skeletons and wore like black cloaks and stuff. It's pretty crazy. I got some pictures. Then he was in another band called Red Sun, talking about like the atomic blast, so then the sun's red. So he had this band called Red Sun. And then I was born in 77, and my dad by then had moved on to doing some original reggae music. So he kind of switched gears. He had a band called Battle Cry in like 1982, 83.
That's very cool.
So I grew up going to a lot of like punk rock shows, but I also went to a lot of reggae shows too, like Jimmy Cliff and Steel Pulse, and just a lot of the original people I got to see when I was young.
Did you know early on that you were going to follow your dad's path?
Pretty much, I think so. I mean, I always was around music. You know, I grew up in a house where dad was always in bands. Dad was always recording bands, or he was traveling in bands, and pretty much when I got into punk rock by age 11, of course, Dad approved of it because he came from being a punk rocker himself. So.
That's right.
I had a rare situation where the dad was cool.
He's like, I raised you right. All right.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's like the first wave of like father son,
Yeah.
with the punk rock generation. I mean, you see a lot more of that now, right? You see like
Yeah.
people our age with kids.
Oh yeah.
So, so what were some of the early influences that got you to even want to play punk?
The year that I got into punk rock, I mean, most of us kids were just coming home watching MTV videos, and the stuff that was on MTV was like Def Leppard and Bon Jovi and all the big hair stuff. But I was getting into skateboarding, and my best friend Chad Ruiz, who's now in Urethane, bass player, I was in San Diego at the time, and Chad got me into punk rock through skateboarding. He was sponsored by Vision when we were kids, and so he'd give me all his skateboards when he got tired of them. They'd give him new decks, and he had a half pipe in his backyard. So he was like the one that came over and was like, "All right, turn that crap off and put this on." And he brought the Sex Pistols record over. So the first time I ever heard punk rock was Nevermind the Bullocks. He brought the album over. And it was something just about Johnny Rotten's voice. It just kind of like, I never heard nothing like that at that time, being 11 years old. So I made him trade. I gave him a bunch of my cassettes for that one record.
Do you remember some of the cassettes you traded?
I mean,
Everybody has a
like
history.
dumb stuff.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, like 10. I mean,
Michael Jackson.
yeah, like
I always like to hear what.
well, there was
Wham.
like, I mean, this is still when like there was like old school hip hop going on still.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Oh, really?
probably like something, I don't know.
Fat boys.
The Fat Boys. Yeah, I was gonna say probably like
I had some Fat Boys
Fat Boys
cassettes.
cassette. And, I don't. I remember it was like 10 cassettes I gave him for one record because
Yeah.
he didn't want to trade me the record,
Yeah.
and I convinced him to trade it to me. So yeah.
So, how long before you decided you were going to start playing music? And was singing your first goal, or did you have other instruments you played?
Well, my dad put a lot of instruments in front of me, like guitar and drum sets, and I mean, I would mess around on them for fun. But I think it was more my mom who noticed that, like when music would come on the TV, like I'd get on the couch, or I'd grab my mom's mop, or I'd try to be like the singer, pretend the mop was like a mic stand. And I think I always wanted to be a frontman more than I wanted to be like a drummer or a guitar player. My dad was frustrated though, because he could play guitar and drums and sing, so he's always like, how come he's not latching on to this, you know? Like, what,
Yeah, yeah.
and you know, but I think that's normal for a father. And basically, I kind of just stuck to wanting to do that. I started out though, interesting. I started out in hip hop first. I didn't have a band in the beginning, and I was actually doing like conscious hip hop and stuff. I was into like KRS-One and Public Enemy. That's why you see this PE right there.
Nice.
That was
Yeah.
a big piece.
So I saw Public Enemy live in San Diego when the Fear of a Black Planet album came out. I went to that tour with my dad and my best friend Chad. And so a lot of the hip hop that's coming out back then was like, it was all message oriented. You know what I mean? Not to say that it isn't now. It's just things change. And so I started out getting into that. I was always into message oriented stuff that I grew up around it, like from reggae to the old school hip hop. So even when I got into punk rock, I got into it because it was like a form of music where I could express a message. You know what I mean? So I've always been into that.
I find it fitting that you mentioned KRS-One, since KRS-One has ties to punk rock, at least hardcore scene. Really, he works with Sick of It All, Blood, Sweat, No Tears. He did an opening to one of their songs, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was in '89, I think. And I think there's more similarities in old school hip hop to punk rock than people realize, as far as messaging and, like you said, conscious hip hop.
Right.
And although it went out of control a little bit later, and it was popping bottles and money and this and that. Back then, it was more about a message and a relaying of what was happening in reality on the streets, which is not any different than street level punk rock.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I moved from San Diego back to my hometown, and we lived there for about 3 years. I went there because I was going to an art school. In second grade, I was like doing a lot of doodles on my homework. I was always behind in like certain areas, like I was slow in certain areas, but I could always draw.
Right.
So my teachers had a parent-teacher conference, and they told my parents, we think he'd be good in art school. He's slow in other areas when we call on his name to answer questions, but he keeps selling his drawings at recess. So I would like put up my drawings on the wall, and then I'd sell them for 50 cents. So like in second grade, all my friends would buy the drawings. A lot of them were like garbage pail kids. I would just draw them bigger,
That'd be cool.
and then
I
people
like the garbage pail
would
kids.
buy them. You know what I mean?
That's
So,
awesome, man.
So yeah, so I started making money early when I like.
You were hustling right at an early age.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Man. Cool.
Yeah, and so through that, the teachers were like, "We think you should be recommended for a fine art school." So we went from Salinas to San Diego so I could go to that school. And my dad formed his new band in San Diego when we got there. So Dad had a mission to kind of expand his band in San Diego. I went to art school. And then my little brother was born around the same time. And eventually we moved back home because my little brother was like, well, most of our family's back home in Salinas. So my brother would be closer to his grandmother and stuff like that. So
Was your dad a full-time musician, or?
yeah, well, he was always in bands, and he only worked at music stores.
Oh,
so
okay. So that was,
he would sell instruments at stores. Yeah, he met a lot of musicians at music stores too, like Jimi Hendrix's dad. Al Hendrix had a thing. He used to work at this place called Daddy's Guitars. It's in San Diego, and they had Al Hendrix come and do like some kind of thing with a new guitar that came out for Jimmy. And I remember Al stayed at our house. We had the drummer from Oingo Boingo stayed at our house.
Right.
Oh, well.
And we always got free tickets to concerts, so that was good,
Nice.
Anytime there was a concert that came to SDSU, my
Right.
dad would get hooked up with tickets, so that was pretty sweet. Yeah.
So this sounds like this was just your destiny, man. Like, you're just born into it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, you do hustle. You know, what I mean, you do put a lot of time and effort into it. And it's noticeable. So you start Infirmities 11 years ago, and what were your first shows like?
So we started in my hometown. There's not a whole lot of venues to play back home. So we started in some pizza joints that would let us just kind of do some punk shows in there. We did one in a place called American Burger, which was like not in Salinas, it's in Monterey. We weren't really. I had been in street punk band before this band, so I already knew like if we write songs that are short, fast, that's what we need so we can keep the circle pit going. The only problem with that kind of formula is because all our songs had to be under 2 minutes. We kind of made a rule in the beginning, and so, it took a long time just to get to like 8 songs. So we did like, I think our first show we only had 8 songs, and everyone's like, play it again, because we're like, all right, that's it, that's all we got. And they're like, do it again. So we did all 8 twice so they could keep going. So we knew we had the formula pretty good from the beginning because people were pitting, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the first time I took it to Los Angeles, I wasn't really sure why they weren't pitting. So the first time we came to LA, we played at CY Festival for Nacho Corrupted, and he gave us a chance. He never heard us before, but Total Chaos had vouched for me because I was old friends with those guys from other bands I was in. They said, yeah, just put Jason on. We haven't heard his band either, but he's an old friend. Just get him in the festival. So I came in high regard. He got me in. It was last minute because the festival was already full, but Infirmities made it in. And I remember thinking, all right, we're going to do this thing. And, like, everyone just, like, stood there and stared at us. Like, we're on stage doing our thing, and they were just, like, staring the whole time. Like, man, they didn't pit at all. So, like, I went kind of home, like, discouraged. Like, man, I thought we had the right formula. So, but what it really was, by the next time we came, the pit just, like, went off. And I think the first show we ever played in L.A., people had never seen us. They didn't know who we were, and they didn't know where we're from. So they were just like staring, like, "Who are these guys?"
Yeah.
They just wanted to watch it the first time. But by the second time, yeah, we had a pretty gnarly pit. I got
Like, damn,
pretty
these
cut
guys are
up.
pretty
by the
good.
second time. Yeah.
So who came up with the name?
Um,
And what why?
So I had a friend named Steven Castro who wanted to start this band with us on guitar, and he had come up with a couple names. At the time, I was just finishing another band I'd been in for 7 years, and I was about to become a father for the first time. So I was kind of like thinking, all right, I'm taking a break. But then my buddy Steven's like, come on, man, make a band with me right now. I was like, nah, you know, I'm not really sure I'm like want to do that right now. And then I had Troy. Troy Salas was the bass player. He was the youngest guy in the band. And he had always been pushing me for like 6, 7 years to make a band with him, but I never had time. And he was a really phenomenal bass player. He's on all the original recordings. He grew up loving like RKL, Matt Freeman style bass playing from Rancid, that kind of bass playing. So those were like his heroes. So he wanted to be able to play that fast and do bass solos and fills that fast. And he achieved that at a really young age. So he used to call me Pops because he was a lot younger than I was. So he's like, come on, Pops, you know, make a band with me. Come on, come on. And he'd keep bugging me. I'm like, all right, fine, let's do it. Then we had to find the right guitar player. He wanted somebody his age. I go, nah, we need somebody my age, bro. I'm like, if we're going to play the kind of style of punk rock that I want to do in my head, we need somebody my age or somebody a little older even. So right away I recruited, he's pretty much an OG back home as far as guitar playing goes. His name's Art Ruiz, and I've been friends with him for like 30 years. He grew up in the 80s, originally going to the hardcore shows. He's the only guy I knew in my hometown that could probably come up with the riffs the way I wanted them to be and wanted them to sound. And so we got together, we formed Infirmities between Troy's bass playing, those guitar riffs, and it just came together quickly.
Awesome.
I was going to ask you, you kind of touched on it, but I was going to ask, when you kind of conceptualized the band and started it, did you have a specific thing you were going for? You know, like a mission for the band as far as the way you wanted it specifically to sound and maybe messages in the songs? Or
Well, I think when people see the band, they kind of think, you know, it's a new band or a new sound or something like that. One thing I did try to go for was I wanted it to feel like in those 30 minutes that you came to see us live that you were like, it was like watching like a punk rock time machine. So I wanted in those 30 seconds to cover all different spans of punk rock. So my mission with this band was that I'd already been in like punk rock bands my whole life. Like I've been singing in punk bands for 32 years now. Infirmities has been the last 11 years, but before that, I was in street punk bands. I was in all different types of bands, and so I think you reach a certain point in your life where you know what works. Maybe there was one song from every band I was in that always worked great at that party. And so I kept that and I brought it back into Infirmities, and I changed some of the lyrics to kind of fit wherever my life was at the time as opposed to where it was when I was 15. So some of the songs we play were written back when I was like 15 years old.
Yeah.
And they were brought back because they always worked in people's houses and garages when I was a kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was just like recycled right back in. It was like a formula where I wanted a little bit of crust, a little bit of crossover, a little bit of, you know, it has your streetcore in there. It has your old school hardcore, punk rock hardcore. It has everything in there, even a little bit of your 90s punk rock, but not much, just enough to give it that blend. So my thing was about keeping every song under 2 minutes, and from the time you walked into our set to the time you left, we'd reach every single person in the audience in those 30 minutes. So it never got boring, because every song was a different era in the punk rock time machine.
Awesome.
So that was my theory of it. But it also came from just singing in punk bands my whole life. So I was like, I want something different that it's going to keep their attention.
right.
What specific bands like were your influences, like that really you gravitated towards?
I think Minor Threat was one of my favorite ones, just because they did something different. Their sound was different. You know, I think we all wish there was more Minor Threat recordings, but whatever's out there is out there. And got demos and all this other stuff. But I liked what they stood for. I mean, because at the time I was listening to like the Sex Pistols or Misfits or Dead Kennedys, but then you had like someone like Minor Threat, where the message was different, the sound was different. I did like Dead Kennedys a lot. East Bay Ray's guitar playing combined with Jello's message was just very unique. The fact that his favorite band was the Beach Boys, and he implemented that into the sound of Dead Kennedys, it really made a difference. But I grew up on everything. The Germs, I liked the Germs. I liked GBH. I had a lot of punk rock friends that were older than me that went to shows at Gilman in the early '80s, and they were all giving me mixtapes. So when I came back to Salinas, they'd all have me mixtapes of like old school punk rock, and that's how I found out about like GBH and the Germs and stuff like that. So there's just so many influences. I mean, I'd be here all day. Exploited is one of them, and we're playing with them in a couple of weeks here, and I'm pretty excited to. It's our first time playing with Waddy, so
That's huge.
so that's pretty exciting.
So you played all over. Where are some of your favorite spots to play in California?
California, we've gone up and down the coast many times. We do love San Diego because I used to live there. It's fun. I visit friends, relatives there. My best friend still lives there. Shout out to Chad. Like I said, he plays bass in Urethane now with Steve Caballero.
Right.
And,
Oh, wow.
so I don't know if you
Great
guys
band.
have them around.
Oh, great band. We've seen them a few times.
Yeah. So I grew up with Chad, and he's actually the best man in my wedding. Almost 25 years ago was Chad.
Oh, wow.
So,
That's cool.
Shout out to my wife. They were almost 25 years now married.
Nice. You played a lot of. Did you play a lot? Did you play like the Gilman Street?
Yeah, we
type
did
shows?
Gilman. So when Infirmities started, we wanted to hit Gilman Street right away. So the first 2 years, we did a show at Gilman. Mike from Oppressed Logic got us into Gilman Street, and Mike was an old friend too. And so we played with ZBS, Skin and Bones, Infirmities, and then we went back to Gilman 2 or 3 times after that. We played there with HR Bad Brains, went back there and played with Decry. Gilman was a pretty familiar spot for us in the beginning. And then we kind of started branching out to other spots. Like in the East Bay area, we like playing at Winners. Winners Tavern's like our favorite spot. It's like a punk rock CBGB's of the Bay.
Right.
Like, it's just got this cool vibe. It's a really fun bar.
We hear a lot about Orange County. That's where we're centered.
Yeah.
Where our bands are. It's where our documentary is
Sure.
basically centered on. But we don't hear a lot about the Gilman Street, Northern California, Frisco type of scene.
Yeah.
And it's nice to hear that. Are the crowds a lot different than out here for you?
I would say so. I would say that when we first started playing out here, I had played like certain spots, like the Doll Hut with my older bands. Then I came back with Infirmities and brought a different sound in to some of the same venues. We started playing like the Tiki Bar with DOA or, different spots out here.
Right.
We used to play, it's closed now, but the Carmen Bar.
Yeah.
We used to play there a lot. We played there with the Dickies, played there with JFA. I played there with MDC. That was one of our favorite little spots.
Awesome.
So, but I don't know. Yeah, it's different. I mean, in terms of like, I don't know, it's weird. Everywhere you go, it's just, there is a different vibe. You know what I mean? From like San Francisco or the East Bay area. Even in my hometown, it's a different vibe than everywhere else I go. I used to throw punk shows in my area. So for about 25 years, I started when I was 19. I was always driving to punk shows. I didn't have a car, but I had friends drive me. My friends would give me a ride to punk shows. Yeah. We always had to go to like Santa Cruz or the Bay Area to see good bands. So one day I was like frustrated. I was like 19. I'm like, why are we always going somewhere else? Like, why don't we just throw it here? So I started making phone calls, and I got the U.S. Bombs to come to my area. Youth Brigade came. I got Final Conflict came. Naked Aggression came. Angry Samoans came. And I just really wanted the scene to be strong in my area. But, you know, I was 19 years old, and we got it pretty strong and solid for a while. We'd have like 400 kids in a room. And I had an indoor skate park where all the bands would play in the middle of a half pipe.
Nice. I was about to ask you where you set up to play.
It's
you
called
know,
the
at those
Skate
shows.
Station. It's no longer there. It's
Cool.
torn down now, but
What year was this?
1997.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 1996, 97.
That is cool. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that idea too. Instead of traveling around to other scenes, you thought let's just plant our flag here,
Yeah,
build our scene here, and that's commendable.
yeah. I tried my best. We had a lot of great shows until the cops finally said, you know, you need a permit.
Always.
They said you need a permit. You can apply. It's $1,000. You might get denied. I'm like, I don't have $1,000.
Right.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That was it. So
Oh, just the fee to apply was.
was $1,000.
If
Oh
they
my
accept
God.
it.
If they accepted it, cool, but you didn't get the money back. So like,
Yeah.
none of us had the money. So
Yeah, yeah.
Sounds like a racket.
Yeah.
So, so with Infirmities, you guys recorded. You guys are with Malt Soda. Is that? Can you
Yeah.
talk about that relationship?
yeah, so we our first real recording of 8 songs. We recorded with Miguel Conflict from Total Chaos. He has a studio out here in LA, and some of our first shows were with them because Rob and Sean and the guys, we've been friends for a long time, way before Infirmities. So another street punk band I was in from Salinas, we were called Los Vigilantes. Vigilantes used to tour with Total Chaos back in the day, so we had our history with them. And so when I formed this band, it was just kind of like, you know, I had a new band, and we linked up and did shows right away. So we recorded with Miguel. I had a demo with 8 songs, and we were shopping it around, trying to find someone to put it out. And it was actually Dave Dalton from Die Laughing Records, Scream Bloody Marys. He recommended, why don't you send it to Scooter Buell from Malt Soda, because his old band Cell Block 5 was on Malt Soda. So he gave me Scooter's email, and I sent him one of our songs. And nothing really happened at first, and I thought, maybe he didn't like it, who knows. And then, so I got his phone number, and I called him, and he said, you know, I don't think I ever got that email. I don't think I ever heard it. And he's like, so how about this? I'll listen to it tonight, and if I like it, I'll call you back, like around 7 or 8 or something. So I'm at home, it's like 7:30, I'm like, all right. So the phone rings, and then Scooter's like, that song kicked my ass. Like, I haven't heard a song I really like in a long time. He's like, I haven't signed any new bands on Malt Soda because they just don't fit with the other bands on the label. But that song, right when I heard it, he's like, I had to call you right back. He's like, and I've already made another phone call before I called you back. And I go, okay, well, who'd you call? He goes, well, I just got off the phone with Sammy Town from Fang, and he's vouching for you. He said he's already played shows with Infirmities, and he says we should sign you. And so he told me, Sammy vouched for you, then I vouch for you. You're in Malt Soda. So I'll put out the record. We'll do a 7-inch.
Awesome.
And we were the rookie, you know, band on the label, so we pretty much made a deal where I think we paid half and he paid half. You know, we were kind of a band he just took a chance on. But he knew that one of the things Sammy told him was that, you know, if you sign him, they'll sell records. Because let's play a lot of shows. That guy works really hard. We've played with Jason a few times, played with his band, and I can tell you that if you press him, they'll be gone. The guy plays a lot. So that was a lot already to be said. So Scooter was like, let's do it. Of course, I thanked Sammy right after.
That's
I
awesome.
wasn't
Yeah.
expecting that.
You can't ask for a better recommendation than that.
Yeah.
So, how did things change? Like when that album came out, did you get bigger shows, better shows?
Well, you know, it's interesting. We played so many shows without any recordings out there. We played a lot of backyards in like East LA, South Central, Compton, Watts. We did all kinds of backyard shows in the beginning. My biggest thing was coming out here was like, we have to start at the bottom, and we got to start in the backyards, because if the kids actually hear it and they love your guys' sound, they're the ones that are going to talk about the band. And I didn't want to come to clubs in the beginning. Like I didn't want to start in any of the bars. I wanted to be in the backyard with all the kids. So my goal was like, we got to start from the streets first. And so we came straight from the streets of Salinas to like Compton, South Central, Watts, East LA. Nacho helped us get us backyard shows. Some kids would tell other kids, and then we ended up playing their backyard. And we were just trying to build from the bottom.
Yeah.
And it worked. So after about a year of that, everyone started asking, do you have a CD? Do you have a recording? And we did, but we were holding on to it. We didn't want to let it out prematurely, so we did it really backwards. We had built up a fan base before the record ever came out. So we just kept playing shows, and everyone kept asking for the record. So when it finally came out, they were gone pretty fast because people have been waiting already for like a year, so it was kind of backwards.
Seems like a smart strategy.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say, man, I think that makes sense.
You created-
That's a great way to do it.
That's a great way to sell records, yeah.
Yeah.
Because
You want to build your kind of solid, devoted fan base first from the ground up.
You created a need for it.
Out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was smart. So you had some measure of success there, and then how'd it go from there?
It was good. We also did something backwards where we didn't make our songs available digitally. Like all these bands were putting their songs on Spotify and all this stuff. And we're like, nah, let's do something backwards. So you had to buy the vinyl record to get a free digital download card inside the record. But you couldn't buy the songs digitally unless you bought the vinyl. So we went backwards.
Yeah, right.
We flipped it.
Yeah.
So we would have someone come to the merch table and like, I don't even have a record player. I'm like, well, that's all right. Put it on your wall or make it into a Frisbee. I'm like, there's a card inside this.
Yeah.
So if you pay $10, you get 8 songs. There's a card inside. You get a free patch and a free sticker too. I go, so if you don't want the record, who cares? Just, make it a Frisbee. And you can still download the songs when you get home.
Yeah.
So we made it like that. So like
That's awesome.
most kids bought the record just because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's smart too, man.
I think that was that's 2 really good business decisions that I don't see other bands doing.
Trying to think.
Well, you're like you're a graphic designer, so you're all about marketing. So it sounds like you're using your marketing skills to market your band and promote.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a second, let's detour away from the band and talk a little bit about what you're doing outside of that, which is what Stan said. You're a graphic designer. We know that because we've worked with you.
Sure.
So that's how you support yourself as well, right?
Yeah, well, that's all I do for a living. So, I touched a little bit on art school when I was a kid, right? So I was always an artist. I went to art school, fine art school as a kid, just for like 1 or 2 years. Moved back from San Diego to Salinas, and right out of high school, well, my senior year, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was always into like art or music is all I really loved. So, when they send you to like the counselor and you're like a senior,
Yeah.
and they make you go to like talk to the counselor about your future or something.
Yeah.
Kind
Been there.
Yeah, so like, they call
No
you,
future.
they call you out of
My
class,
future was
right?
good.
And you're supposed to go to the office to talk
Yeah,
to some lady, right? And like high school to me was like, I mean, I don't know. It was like in high school, I was like the only punk rocker on my campus when I was like a junior, and I took a lot of heat during that year, being the only punk rocker on campus. And in my school, we had like a lot of like mixture of kids. There was like the jocks and the hicks and like it's just like I felt like I took a lot of heat that particular year for some reason, and then like when I came back as a senior, punk rock was all of a sudden like popular and trendy, and so those kids came in with like purple hair and it was all good. But like when I came in, it was right before that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but for some reason, all these like freshman kids, we start hanging out as well because they're like want to know who's that dude, because they were like fresh and I was like coming out of high school. So I formed this thing called Dead Valley Punks, which was pretty much just like a punk rock thing. I mean, it wasn't a gang or anything like that. We were just something where we got together, listened to punk rock records, and pretty much having like a crew. And so I had formed that in high school. And I got called out of class to go see the counselor. And she's like, what are you good at? And I'm like, I don't know, like music, art. So she's like, have you ever thought of graphic design? I go, well, what is that? She's like, well, you get paid to do art on computers, and you can make a living at that. And I was like, all right, I don't really like computers, but it sounds kind of cool. So at the time, they were saying computers were the future, and we'd all laugh at them. At the time, the internet had just come out, and it was super slow. It was like Netscape with like
Yeah.
little globe in the outer space.
93, 94.
Dial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So nobody really believed that computers and the internet was going to be what it is now. And but anyway, I listened to the counselor, and so right after my senior year, I ended up going straight to like Hartnell College, which is the local community college in Salinas, and I went straight into a multimedia graphic design program where I learned like Photoshop and all the Adobe stuff. And it started out as like me doing flyers for bands, started out as a hobby. Then I took on internships. So I worked for KSBW. I worked for Channel 8 News, KSBW. I looked for the local newspaper in my hometown, which was Salinas, California. And I was creating the entertainment section for the newspaper, and I was creating graphics for the news every night. So I had 2 jobs, and I only had a bicycle. So, so I would ride my bike from like my first job, and then I'd ride my bike to the other job, and then the other job, then I'd ride my bike from that side of town to the other side of town to go home. I got to go under the bridge on my bike. It was like freezing, 3 a.m. I had one during the day and one at night, so I had 2 jobs.
Wow.
But they were both graphic design, so I wanted to see if I could even make it in the real world doing that before I got into it. Like if I like it in the real world and I can keep up with it, then maybe I should really just do that. And then I liked it, so.
So you launched your own thing, what you're doing now, right?
Yeah, I started my own business. Well, I worked for a lot of different companies first. I got my feet wet, and then I went back to school, got my degree in graphic design in like 2000, 2002, something like that. And then I graduated in 2004. That school was in San Jose, Sunnyvale. And I came back home with this piece of paper that I thought was going to like find me a good job or something. And I applied to a couple of places, but they were like, well, we only want someone that has a master's degree. No, I didn't want to do any more school.
Right.
At the time, I was 26 already, and I thought, I think I know enough. I'm just going to try to make my own thing.
Right.
So I went down to the courthouse in Salinas, and I got my business license, and I started my business. I was about 26. I got my first office downtown when I was 29. So I first started working from home, like 26, 27. I worked from home till I filled up a file cabinet. It was about as big as that little guy right there. And I wanted to fill it up with files until once I knew I had enough clients, my wife kind of made a deal with me because I was in the kitchen taking up the area where the kitchen table would go. And we had this other little, what do you call that? People eat on the stools on the...
Oh, yeah,
like a little
breakfast counter.
Yeah. So we would eat on that, And instead of the kitchen table, I had a big desk right there where I'd make phone calls and try to get business. And so, but my wife had made a deal. She's like, as soon as you fill the file cabinet up, I want you out of here. I want you to go get an office. So one day it got filled up, and she's like, all right, it's time to go. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm making a lot of money now. She's like, yeah, that's the point. It's time to go.
Yeah, nice.
So she kind of made me go downtown.
What's awesome is you're able to draw off of your association with music, punk rockers, right?
Yeah.
That was your bread and butter, right? So you started probably working with bands and design for them, right? I would imagine, because that's what you've done for us as well.
Yeah, well, just like now, I was playing in bands, so I knew bands, and everybody needed flyers or logo or whatever. But one thing about going to college, learning the history of graphic design and learning about different eras of time, different designers, I got a real love for like Art Deco, a lot of stuff like Sal Bass, who created a lot of the original motion picture graphics that were like the sci-fi stuff. He made like the Vertigo poster
Oh, right.
and stuff like that. So there were certain artists I learned about in history. Well, I was like, I really like this guy, or I liked Warhol, or I liked people that were kind of like creating stuff that just had like a real pop to it. So I kind of made it a goal for myself. Like, I don't want to just be a designer. Like, I want to specialize in a certain style of design. And so, right out of college, I specialized in vintage style and Art Deco, and you know, punk rock. I mean, like, I wanted stuff to pop. I knew how to mix certain bright colors. You know, I had learned enough in college about, you know, the color wheel and how to make things pop, and I knew what certain colors meant. I knew what certain colors bring certain vibe when you look at them. So after learning all that, it was kind of like, okay, I know what to do.
Cool.
You know what I mean?
Very
So
cool.
it all kind of came together.
It's awesome.
That's awesome.
I could say school wasn't a waste of time. It wasn't a lot of money.
It doesn't sound like a waste
It was
of
a student loan.
time.
So you've done some cool traveling too with your band, right? You guys went to Europe. Was it 2 years ago or?
Yeah, we did it. Well, right before COVID, we did 2018 and 2019. We did 2 overseas tours. We got invited to Rebellion for the first time in 2018. Played the introducing stage. I took my wife and daughter on the road with us, and my daughter had been on stage with me since she was 2 years old. And she hadn't actually sang with me, though, till we got to England. And it wasn't really rehearsed or nothing. Like, I never planned for her to actually, like, go up there and do it, but she told me she wanted to. So we get to Rebellion. We did a whole tour of different parts of England, Germany. We did Belgium. And we had a driver the whole time. So we had hired a driver that lived in England. So he drove us around. Because the first time going, I'm like, I don't know, I'm gonna get us lost. Like, I don't know if I can drive on the other side of the van, and I just seemed too like.
Yeah.
And then the element of bringing your family, it's like, yeah, no, we need a driver. Like, it's got to be safe at least. So
Smart move.
So we hired this guy named Ryan Price, and we had quite a surprise when we got to England. Our guitar player didn't make it into the country. He got sent back to Los Angeles. So right when we all arrived and the tour was about to start, we didn't have a guitar player. But thank God our driver was a guitar player.
Wow.
So he had a Marshall at home, and he had a Les Paul, and he was a punk rock guitarist. So we go. Our first show was supposed to be in London, England. Right when we got off the airplane, he was going to drive us like 3-4 hours straight to London. But because we didn't have a guitarist, I go, okay, we got to cancel London. Let's get to your house and show you the songs. So he had to learn the songs. That night, he stayed up all night with headphones like this. The next morning, we went and rented a lockout somewhere in England, and he learned 22 songs in 4 hours.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Good thing they're under 2 minutes.
Yeah. And he could really retain stuff really well. He was a really good guitarist, so shout out to Ryan.
Saves the day.
Yeah.
He saved
Ryan's
our whole
badass.
tour. He ended up, we went right after that 4-hour session. Our first show was in Wales, and we played at the North Bar, and every other show after that was just amazing. We were so grateful because Ryan saved the tour playing guitar, and he was our driver, so it was like
That's
a
awesome.
So just on a footnote with that, does he play in a band now? You know?
Oh yeah, he's in a couple bands. He's in a band called Wonk Unit, and let's see, I don't know if he still does that. He's in 2 other bands. Fight for Fires. Yeah, I think that's
Cool.
Yeah.
I figured he deserved a little shout out of his band.
Oh yeah, no,
Whoever-
Ryan's
That's
he's an
amazing.
amazing guitar player.
Yeah.
Awesome guy too. He really took care of us. So he did so well in 2018, learning those songs on the fly that like we got asked to come back to Rebellion in 2019. So we went from the small stage, the introducing stage. I brought my daughter up there, not knowing how that was going to go. It was just her idea to get up there. She's like, Daddy, can I sing with you? I'm like, yeah, I guess so. Let's do it. So we get up there, and actually this right here, my daughter puts her foot on it, just like that. And she was like standing there, and that they lowered the mic stand all the way to the down. 'Cause that's about. She was only about this tall, you know.
That's awesome.
And she's just standing there with the punk rock vest, like ready. I'm looking at the band. I'm like, I don't know what's gonna happen, but yeah, let's do it. And then I told the sound man, look, I don't know how loud she's gonna sing. It's never been done before, so just watch her mic because it might be. I don't know what's gonna happen. No problem, mate. I got it. You know. And then it was funny because before the songs even started, there was all these people shooting pictures of my daughter because she was like, you know, she was 5, little flipped up hat and this little vest. And right when the songs kicked in, she just like went for it. What like tripped me out the most was that she knew the words to the songs, and I never really thought, you know, when you drive around the car with Daddy, listen to punk rock, you don't really think that they're retaining everything they hear, but they do, like little sponges. There were certain songs that were her favorites before we went there, like 1 or 2 of them. But what I didn't realize is she knew a lot of the words because she's screaming it into the microphone. So you had to, you know, and I'm trying not to like look down and lose my focus on the audience. So like I would look up and I'd be I kind of look to my left. I'm like, yeah, don't even look at her. Just keep going. Because like, but I was pretty amazed.
Yeah, man.
At just what she's doing. But you can't have like this fatherly moment where you disconnect here.
Yeah.
And your child's like, okay, we're performing. We only got 30 minutes. But it was pretty crazy. And so when we got off stage right away, my wife had filmed it because she was in the front filming. And it's on YouTube. You can still watch that video when she was 5. Right when we got off stage, the guy that was running that rebellion stage, Johnny Wawa, shout out to Johnny, he's like, that was fantastic, mate. She's your daughter, right? I go, yeah. He's like, how old is she? I go, 5. He's like, okay, that was amazing. He's like, you come back next year on the main stage, and we're going to have you play with Descendants next year on the main stage. And I said, oh,
Wow.
okay. So I left with that, right?
And the daughter got you hooked up.
Yeah. And it's funny, though, because people think, like, did you, like, plan that? Or was that, like, I go, no, not at all. Like, I was spontaneous. We didn't rehearse with my daughter. We didn't know she was going to sing. And it just happened that way.
It's in the blood.
Yeah, you may have just already answered it, but I was going to ask you, what so far is the most memorable show that you've
That
played?
was it.
That's
That
it.
was it.
Yeah,
That's
it's got to
It's
be
on,
that.
it's on YouTube.
Cool.
I get that question a lot. It's definitely that one because my daughter surprised me, you know.
Yeah.
My daughter still sings, and she sings with the band. She likes to join me here and there, not all the time, but then again, not all the shows are all ages, you know what I mean?
What's the name of her band?
Well, she doesn't have her own band, but she does sing. Her name's Ezra Sky. If you go to EzraSky.com, she's got her own website.
All right. People can check that out.
Yeah, I've seen her play with you guys when
Yeah.
Doug was playing drums.
Yeah,
yeah.
that was pretty close to the second, right before we went to Rebellion the second time when you
Yeah.
saw us. Yeah, she just has a she's not afraid. And she's always loved the stage. Like, since she was 2 years old, I used to carry on one arm, and I'd sing like this, and she'd just be, like, smiling, like, watching the pit from above. You know, she wasn't actually singing, but I could tell she, like, liked it, and she liked the crowd. So she also used to run around the stage, but the mic wasn't plugged in.
Yeah.
So she would, like, it looked like she was singing, but she wasn't plugged in.
That's
So
so
when she
cool.
finally said, I want to sing, I'm like, all right, let's do it. Plugged her in, and that was it. It was just kind of like, so she's joined me from like 5, 6, 7, we stopped because of COVID, and then 8, she performed with me at the Ventura Theater. Then we did a show at Tia Sawal when she was 9. And now she's 10, and we're going to do punk rock bowling together. So,
Right.
That's
It's
crazy.
going to be a young kid with their own band pretty soon, man.
yeah.
That's
yeah.
amazing.
Just going to find the right musicians.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like
That's the hard part.
Yeah,
the
always.
generations of in your family have grown up in music have just
Yeah,
it's
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, I can mention there's 4 generations. My daughter would be the 4th generation of music in my family because
It's amazing.
before my father, his father also did music. So you got 4 generations.
It's impressive, man. So how about what is coming up for the Infirmities now? I know you mentioned a few shows already, but
You're working on a documentary, right?
Yeah, it's been about 3 years.
That's about right.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Well, yeah, it's it's still not done. I mean, what I've learned about documentaries from my experience is when you're doing a punk rock documentary, first of all, there's no money, so it's all, you know, you're putting out money to travel and put this thing together, and it's all DIY, it's all hard work. The editing time is just horrendous. The going out and filming stuff is the fun part. It's the going back and deciding what to keep, what not to keep is probably the longer transitional part of the documentary. I've been working on a documentary now for, gosh, I don't know, 3.5 years or something. Like, what happened was we had some guys that were following us around and they wanted to make a documentary on infirmities. And we started playing so many shows that they just kind of bowed out. I don't know what happened to those guys. And I can't even find the footage that they shot. I've tried to find it just to add it to my documentary, and I gave up. I'm like, I don't know. But they kind of gave us the idea because they saw how much we were playing. And then even though they disappeared and we kept playing, one day I was telling Harvey, my guitarist, I'm like, man, sucks those guys disappeared, but like, we should still do that. Like, we're playing so many shows and touring so much, like, somebody's got to, like, follow us around or something, or we got to, like, do something. So I started filming myself a lot with my phone. I got an iPhone, and I do a lot of filming and editing on that in iMovie. So I was just saving and stashing a whole library of stuff. And then I had a guy who had interviewed us to be in a small documentary. Well, it was more like what do you call that? A short film. It was a short film, and it was based on the punk rock backyard scene. And so his name's Jeremy Mowry. So Jeremy made this little movie, and we were in his documentary. It was like 5 bands were in it, and he won some indie film awards for that little movie. And it had an interview with me and Harvey, and it had us playing a backyard show with a swimming pool in Riverside. It was a lot of fun, that show. And so from that, it gave me the idea that I should ask him to do the documentary because at least he has some experience, and I need a guy that kind of knows what he's doing. So I had lunch with Jeremy, and he's like, yeah, I'm down to help you out. I've been looking for a new project. And I go, well, there's kind of this one problem. There's no money. So are you cool with that? He's like, that's like the punk rock, like, after the cheeseburger, it's like, well, just want to be clear, there's no money. So he's like, no, I figured that. He's like, maybe when the movie comes out one day, some will come back, and hopefully. He's like, but I'm not even in it for that. I'll do it. Right. So Jeremy helped me for about, up until like this past year, Jeremy took a full-time job teaching at the LA college at teaching animation. So his strongest point was always doing animation stuff. Like, he can make puppets and make a move and make like old school claymation stuff, but also like Lego stuff. Like, cool. He's really good. He's won awards for a lot of his animation stuff.
Nice.
But that's really his main focus. And he was like, to be honest, Jay, I never really was a director. You wanted me to become your director, but the truth is I'm more of an animation guy. Like, he's like, you should probably pass it on to a real director. Like, I'll give all my footage. Like, are you sure? I feel like, you've been so diehard with me. But he's like, yeah, but I just don't have time. And I don't want your documentary to, like, freeze in time, and you need to get it done,
Some selfish of him. Gave up all that footage and all that work he did.
Yeah, and I told him, well, I still want your name. He's like, no. Get another director. His name goes up there. He's like, just give me some in the credits. Credit me for the videos and the.
Cool.
So I bought a hard drive, and I put all the footage on there, and then I ended up reaching out to another old friend who has known me since I was about 10 years old. He came to my birthday party when I was 10. He was good friends with my father, and he worked in the film industry already, and he had worked with George Romero from Night of the Living Dead. He had directed other films. He had done interviews with Stan Lee from Marvel Comics. So he was somebody who was really, like, seasoned in working in the film industry. And I thought, man, if anyone could direct my film and I'd have the most confidence, it'd probably be Leo. But I wasn't sure about asking because I knew, like, one, I have no money, and two, he's probably busy. Like, just looking at his Facebook page, he was always at conventions or talking to people working on Black Panther or working on Batman or whatever. He's just always, like, involved in the film industry. So, and his brother is, so there's Leo Partible is his name. His brother is Van Partible, who created Johnny Bravo, the cartoon.
Yeah.
That's his brother. So,
Yeah.
so shout out to those guys. So, and here's the cool part, though. They're originally from Salinas, too.
Oh, okay.
So this is where it all ties
Alright.
in. So Leo went to my birthday party when I was around 10, and he was recording his original music in my dad's studio back then. So he's also a musician. So when I asked Leo, it was around the time 2020 was hitting. We had nothing going on. He'd come by to jam on some songs, and we were just hanging out. And he got to meet my daughter. He drew her picture and stuff. He does like really cool like comic book art type stuff. And he had asked me to be in a film that he was making, and do some like cameo stuff, and he just wanted to get me involved. So we were doing that, and at the time, Jeremy was telling me he was going to leave, or he couldn't take on the documentary anymore. So I told Leo, I said, hey man, I was going to ask you something. Like, yeah, I've been working on this documentary. He knew about the documentary. And I said, yeah, my director seems like, he's getting too busy, and I want to know what you thought about directing it. And he's like, man, I know how hard you've been working on that thing, like, for years. I go, yeah, but I need someone with, like, real vision, I feel like I'm feeding the vision of this film, but I need someone like you, because you're good at screenwriting, you're good at, like, all that stuff. And he's like, yeah, okay. He's like, I'll do it, you know what I mean? So it just it's been really fun working with Leo on it.
Right.
Because he comes up with these ideas that I haven't thought of, and we just click. Like every time even when I leave here, we're probably gonna meet up at Denny's right now after this, and we just feed off of each other's ideas. He'll be like, it'd be really cool if we did this on the train tracks, and then you go over here, and then next time I come to Salinas, we'll film you in the old neighborhood where you grew up. We'll go back to that house. So we're trying to make the film feel very, like a grassroots type of thing where it feels like not just a punk rock documentary that has like interviews with, that's what you do. You put interviews with people in there. Like we've got Jack Brissom in there, HR from Bad Brains is in it, Reagan Youth's in it doing an interview, Agent Orange is in it, Black Dahlia's in it. But the thing is, you don't want to just make your documentary just be that. Like I want it to feel like it's got an interview with my dad in there. It's got my best friend that I grew up with in there. So my whole thing is like having a film that people watch where they really feel that hometown vibe,
Right.
and that family vibe, not just like a punk rock story. So
Sounds cool, man.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very cool. I mean, working as a, I don't know, whatever, PA with these guys, it's fun to see people with chemistry bounce ideas off one another and
Yeah.
being on the same page and watching things progress. It's fun to watch. I bet you've had a great time.
Mm.
A lot of work, but I bet it's been satisfying.
it's been really fun.
Yeah, good deal, man. That sounds great.
Cool.
All right. So that's awesome. That's what you got coming up. All right.
Yeah, well, but that's coming up. We're gonna release the trailer this summer.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, we've been, now that Leo's on the project, he said we gotta get the trailer out. I'm like, all right.
Are you holding on to the title, or have you?
No, it's called Just a Kid from Salinas. It's the name of the
Very cool.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see that trailer.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
You said you had a show with the Exploited coming up too?
Yeah, we got a show at the Santa Cruz Vets Hall coming up with The Exploited and Total Chaos.
Nice.
And we have another show coming up with Death by Stereo and Ignite.
Rad.
And that's going to be in Palmdale at
Cool.
Transplants. And we're playing Crash Festival in Portland, Oregon with GBH and Fang. And
That's a rad lineup too.
yeah, Blank 77.
Rad.
That's going to be in October.
Man, you've got some great shows coming up.
Yeah, we've had a really crazy, amazing year. It's been like one of those years where every month has been like some like unreal show that we're on. We're like, and it's just been consecutive. Like it started in January that way.
Yeah.
Like in January we had a show with Ill Repute Fang and Stalag 13. That was January.
So we're right on it.
Like we kicked off the year like that.
So
and then it just kept going. Like every show was like great this year.
yeah.
Nice.
And I don't want to go. I mean, we're about to wrap this up. I know, and I don't want to keep you too long. But do you feel like post-COVID, there's been a kick in the ass for people? Like we need to get the scene back rolling. Like people seem to be way more into putting together these like epic lineups and getting back on the road and putting together more shows. People are more active than pre-COVID, right? I feel like there's been rejuvenation. You know.
I think punk rock's never gone away, but I think what's happened is there's been like a resurge of bands wanting to get out and play more than ever right now. I think that, we wrote a song about what it was like being on lockdown. It's called Welcome to Sublock Earth, and it's kind of like an anthem when we play now. Everyone sings along with it. And so even though that's gone away, even though we're not on lockdown, and everybody went through that and understands the vibe of it, it's like we're still living in this kind of weird thing afterwards.
Yeah. Well, it can go away.
Yeah.
Now that it can go away, people are like, we need to get back out there next year. You never know.
Exactly.
So, cool.
One thing is it made bands get off their butts, and they're really out there touring more. You know what I mean? And,
well, we all benefit as fans, so we're all stoked, man.
Yeah, it's good.
It's awesome, man. But yeah, I think it's been a great interview. Any final words of wisdom?
I would just say, like, if you come from a small town like mine, like I'm from right here, Salinas, California. I would kind of encourage any, new bands just starting out. I mean, don't let anything hold you back, and don't give up. The real message of the documentary that we've been working on for 3 years is that I wanted to inspire, like a young punk rocker in a small town.
Yeah.
That, he can leave his town and take it anywhere and make it happen. I mean, I may have not come to Los Angeles till I was 35 years old, but I'll tell you that by the time I was 35, I was like, I need to get out there and give it a shot. Just to get it out of my system.
Yeah,
so
if
it doesn't happen,
right,
then at least I know I gave it everything I had.
But you had to give it a shot. You had to know if you could do it or not.
Yeah, because I didn't really go in my 20s. I just had other stuff going on, and I did play shows, but not in Los Angeles. And once I took it to LA, we just took off. It just kept going and going and going. And I would just tell, to anyone just starting out in bands, if you really want to do something, just get out there and do it. I mean, there's nothing really holding you back.
Great advice.
And don't let members leaving your band end your dream either. One thing about Infirmities that I didn't mention is we have an Infirmities army. It's not a regular band like most bands. And when I say that, I mean that if one guy can't make it, we have other subs that come in so that we can make all the shows. So one thing I really would advise to young bands is, we all want to be the same 4 guys or 5 guys, but if it doesn't work out, you can't let that, determine the future of your band. And if you really want something and you really want to get it out there, then you need to just not give up and find other people. So we have a lot of subs, and everyone in my band's good with it.
Yeah.
And my guys say, I can't make that one, give it to David, or hey, I can't make that one, go ahead and call Johnny. It's
That's cool, because it's hard to put aside egos in bands.
Yeah.
If somebody somebody can't make a show, somebody subs in, there's still weirdness sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
So that's really cool you're able to do that.
Well,
Everyone's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. That's great advice.
Sounds like you're even covered in the UK when you go over there.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Right on, man. Well, hey, thanks for coming out. And where can people find you?
Everything it says We Are Infirmities. So Facebook, we're under We Are Infirmities. Instagram, We Are Infirmities. We have a YouTube channel with over 100 live videos on it. Once again, the YouTube channel's We Are Infirmities. You can buy our merchandise at maltsoda.com. You can find Infirmities skateboard decks there. You can find some of our vinyls are still there, different colored ones, blue, white. So they're actually the only ones that still have some of our vinyl because all of ours are sold out from shows. But big shout out to Scooter. We are working on some new stuff that we're putting out. We have an Infirmities live at the Fox Theater album coming out from my hometown. We have a full-length album coming out with 21 songs.
Cool.
So yeah, there's stuff down the pipe.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, for
Right
sure.
on.
Right on, man.
Cool. Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, thanks,
Thanks
Jay.
for having me, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Good times, dude.
Right. All right.
That's cool.
That's it.